It is the year 630 CE on the Arabian Peninsula. Muhammad, the man who claims to have received revelations from God, is commanding a formidable force of 10,000 men as they march towards Mecca, the sacred city. The atmosphere is filled with anticipation and uncertainty. Will the Quraysh, the powerful tribe that reigns supreme and banished Muhammad from his home 8 years earlier, resist this advance? Or will they succumb to what Muhammad sees as an inevitable tide of change? As Mecca appears in the horizon, the tension builds. Memories of previous conflicts with the Quraysh are still fresh in mind. The fate of Mecca, and indeed the future of Islam, hangs on the edge of a knife. How did this historic conflict unfold? To comprehend what led to Muhammad's march on Mecca, we must journey back in time to events that occurred 60 years ago.
This is where our journey begins, a journey back in time. From the dawn of civilization in Mesopotamia to the rise of glorious empires, from the halo of fabled personalities to the shadows of ruthless regimes. Witness the drama of epic battles and the moments when the world stood still. Events that didn't destroy us, but defined us. We combine cutting-edge technology and artificial intelligence to resurrect legendary historical towns and retell ancient love stories. Underpinned by powerful music, you'll feel like you're part of it. Welcome to Epic Histories, where each chapter brings the past alive.
In the early 7th century, a man emerged on the Arabian Peninsula that would change the world. Muhammad ibn Abdullah was born in 570 CE in Mecca to the influential Quraysh tribe. After his parents died, he was raised by his grandfather, followed by his uncle. Muhammad's early years were spent as a shepherd, then as a businessman. At the age of 25, he married Khadija bint Khuwaylid, who was 15 years his senior. When he was 40 years old, Muhammad went on meditation in a cave on Mount Hira, when he claimed to have been visited by an angel who revealed to him his first message from God. Over the next few years, Muhammad received additional revelations from Allah. Initially, he shared these messages with his closest family and friends. His wife Khadija was one of the first to believe in him, followed by his cousin Ali ibn Abi Talib and companion Abu Bakr. As Muhammad's message spread, it gained both supporters and enemies. The Quraysh tribe, which dominated Mecca's lucrative trade and pilgrimage routes, considered Muhammad's teachings as a danger to their authority and polytheistic traditions. As a direct result of their retribution against Muslims, Muhammad felt mandated by God to move from Mecca to Medina. In June 622 CE, Muhammad and his closest companion, Abu Bakr, set out on their treacherous voyage under the cover of darkness. Upon arrival at Medina, Muhammad and his men were greeted warmly by the Ansar, who previously pledged to help Muhammad and defend him against all enemies. Muhammad's reception was characterized by joyful celebrations, feasts and prayers. Soon after Muhammad's arrived in Medina, Muhammad ordered the construction of Masjid al-Nabawi, also known as the Prophet's Mosque. The chosen location was a tract of land purchased from two orphan boys, Sahal and Suhail, who were adequately compensated for their property. The mosque was made with native resources like mud bricks and palm trunks. Its simple yet effective design embodied the early Muslim community's core ideals of modesty and humility. Masjid al-Nabawi rapidly became the main gathering place for Muslims in Medina as a place of worship and administrative center. They would come here to pray, discuss important problems, settle disagreements, and seek advice from the Prophet. The mosque also acted as a venue for social meetings and community events, promoting togetherness among its members. The founding of Medina as a Muslim community coincided with considerable social reforms and the implementation of Islamic laws and practices. One of Muhammad's first actions was to build alliances with local tribes known as Ansar, or helpers. These tribes had embraced the Muhajirun, providing them with shelter and assistance. The partnership between Muhajirun and Ansar was cemented by the Brotherhood Pact, which matched each member of one tribe with another to develop mutual support and understanding. This covenant not only gave emotional support, but it also assured that each member had someone to turn to in times of difficulty. However, relations with the Jewish tribes in Medina were more complicated. Initially, there were agreements such as the Medina Constitution, which protected non-Muslims' free practice of their faith, while also compelling them to contribute to Medina's defense. However, political and theological disagreements eventually led to conflicts. Notable disputes were those with the Banu Qaynuqa and Banu Nadir tribes, which resulted in their expulsion from Medina. Economic hardship was a big challenge for early Muslim migrants. Many Muhajirun had abandoned their wealth and businesses in Mecca and struggled to establish themselves in Medina. To overcome this issue, the Muhammad emphasized generosity and mutual support among the society. The concept of zakat, or charitable donation, became central to Islamic practice, ensuring that money was distributed equally among believers. Trade agreements were also formed to promote economic progress. Medina's strategic location made it a key commerce hub between Mecca and Syria. Muhammad forged commercial treaties with neighboring tribes to ensure safe passage for merchants and promote business. Despite these attempts, economic difficulties remained. In the early 7th century, economic conditions in Medina and Mecca were precarious. The Meccan boycott caused major economic troubles for the Muslim community in Medina, which was led by Prophet Muhammad. This boycott, which began in 617 CE, was a reaction to Muhammad's increasing prominence and the conversion of many Meccans to Islam. In January 623 CE, Prophet Muhammad learned about a Meccan caravan heading from Syria to Mecca. Intelligence suggested that this caravan was carrying valuable products that may help Medina's economy. He ordered Abdullah ibn Jahsh to lead a small party of 8 men to intercept the caravan. The instructions were straightforward: acquire intelligence and, if feasible, seize or disable the convoy without engaging in combat unless absolutely essential. On the 10th day of Rajab, January 623 CE, the Muslim group encountered the caravan near Mecca in Nakhla. However, they found themselves in a predicament. The meeting occurred during the sacred month of Rajab, when fighting was usually outlawed among Arabs. Despite this, a skirmish erupted, killing the leader of the caravan and 2 other Meccans. The Nakhla raid, also known as the Expedition of Nakhla, was one of the first military conflicts with the Muslim minority and drew outrage due to its timing during a holy month. When they returned to Medina, Prophet Muhammad initially condemned their acts, but eventually accepted the spoils after hearing a revelation from Allah that emphasized that fighting in self-defense was permitted even during sacred months. By 624 CE, the Meccans had increased their economic siege against Medina. The blockage significantly limited the Muslim community's ability to trade and obtain vital items. In response, Prophet Muhammad chose to intercept another Meccan caravan returning from Syria. This caravan was significantly larger than the one they attacked more than a year earlier, and it was tightly guarded by a large number of Meccan warriors. Despite being outnumbered, Prophet Muhammad rallied his followers, emphasizing the value of unity and faith. In March 13, 624 CE, Muhammad led an army of roughly 313 men against the Meccan contingent numbered around 1,000. The fight began with a series of duels between notable warriors on both sides. As the combat became more intense, Muhammad asked for divine intervention, which resulted in a sandstorm that blinded the Meccans and gave the Muslims an advantage. The Muslims then launched a coordinated attack, which resulted in a resounding victory. In what became known as the Battle of Badr, the Meccans suffered significant losses, with more than 70 slain and many more captured. The Muslims lost just 14 men. Following their defeat at Badr, the Meccans became seized with a desire for vengeance. In March 23, 625 CE, a massive Meccan force led by Abu Sufyan ibn Harb was nearing Medina. Muhammad, having learned of the impending peril, decided to take defensive positions on Mount Uhud. The Muslim army totaled around 700 soldiers, whereas the Meccan forces were over 3,000 strong. Initially, the Muslim archers successfully held off the Meccan cavalry from their high point on Mount Uhud. However, as the fight continued, and it appeared that the Muslims were on the verge of triumph, several archers fled their stations to pillage Meccan riches. This exposed their flank to an attack by Khalid ibn al-Walid's cavalry troop. The surprise counterattack took many Muslim fighters off guard, resulting in pandemonium and huge deaths. The combat resulted in substantial losses for both sides, but it ended inconclusively, with neither side claiming a clear victory. The Muslims lost approximately 70 men, including several famous companions such as Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib. Despite their losses at Uhud, the Muslims did not give up. Instead, they regrouped under Prophet Muhammad's leadership, which emphasized tenacity and faith in the face of adversity. In 627 CE, a huge threat loomed over Medina as a coalition of tribes, chiefly led by the Quraysh and Ghatafan, formed against the Muslim community. The Quraysh, who had long opposed Muhammad and his followers, saw an opportunity to permanently smash Islam's rising authority. The Ghatafan tribe, on the other hand, was motivated by economic concerns, fearing that Medina's growing strength might disrupt their trade routes. The coalition was a formidable force made up of numerous Arabian Peninsula tribes. Abu Sufyan ibn Harb of the Quraysh and Uyayna ibn Hisn of the Ghatafan were two leaders that played critical roles in rallying their tribes and coordinating their efforts against Medina. Under Prophet Muhammad's leadership, the Muslim community in Medina implemented elaborate defensive measures to prepare for the impending siege. One of the most important contributions came from Salman al-Farsi, a Persian convert to Islam who proposed constructing a trench around Medina to protect it from cavalry attacks. Salman al-Farsi's concept was novel for the time and represented his expertise with comparable defense techniques utilized in Persia. The trench would act as a barrier, neutralizing the coalition's horse advantage and forcing them into infantry battle, where the Muslims would be better able to defend themselves. The trench encircling Medina was built collaboratively by almost every member of the Muslim community. Men, women, and even children helped dig the gigantic trench, which ran for several kilometers surrounding the city. The work was difficult and time-consuming, requiring extensive physical labor in severe desert circumstances. In addition, some community members expressed concern and frustration over whether such a tactic would be effective against such a big enemy force. However, Muhammad helped to keep his followers' morale up. He dug the ditch alongside his friends, demonstrating unity and dedication. In March 627 CE, the Meccan coalition arrived at Medina with an estimated 10,000 troops. This was one of the largest armies ever gathered in Arabia during that period. The first skirmishes between the two sides were violent but inconclusive. The coalition forces were confident in their numerical superiority, anticipating an easy win against what they saw as a small and weak population. However, they quickly recognized that crossing or breaching the trench would be significantly more difficult than expected. Despite repeated attempts utilizing various means, such as covering sections of the trench with soil or attempting to discover weak places throughout its length, coalition forces were unable to breach it effectively. Muslim defenders greeted these attacks with great opposition, using arrows, stones, and other projectiles to repel their assailants. Psychological warfare also played an important part. Muslim defenders would frequently sing Quranic verses or yell slogans to raise morale while terrifying their opponents. One prominent occurrence included Amr ibn Abd al-Wud, a well-known Quraysh fighter who managed to cross the trench but was killed by Ali ibn Abi Talib in single battle. As days stretched into weeks, without any substantial advances against Medina's defenses, divisions within coalition ranks emerged as a result of differences over strategy and leadership. The circumstances created rising disenchantment among coalition members who eventually gave up hope of gaining victory. After nearly a month-long siege marked by harsh weather conditions, such as strong winds and cold temperatures, which added misery to besieging forces already frustrated by a lack of progress against trench defenses, coalition forces decided to withdraw back towards Mecca, abandoning plans to conquer Medina for good. Withdrawal represented a great triumph for Prophet Muhammad and his people, who demonstrated fortitude and tenacity in the face of enormous odds. The aftermath witnessed greater prestige and influence for Islam throughout the Arabian Peninsula, cementing Medina's role as the focal core of Islamic growth. For coalition tribes, defeat proved costly in terms of morale and resources expended on a hopeless quest. In the year 628 CE, a watershed point in Islamic history occurred when Prophet Muhammad decided to take a party of his followers to Mecca to perform Umrah, a minor pilgrimage. This choice was both a religious obligation and a strategic gesture designed to demonstrate the Muslim community's peaceful intentions. Muhammad assembled roughly 1,400 men and left Medina armed but with no intention of fighting. The caravan was well equipped with camels, supplies, and pilgrim-appropriate ceremonial clothing. As they approached Hudaybiya, a valley just outside Mecca, they encountered resistance from Quraysh officials, who were desperate to keep them from entering the city. The Quraysh had long been enemies of the Muslims, and they saw this trip as an attempt to undermine their power. The initial resistance from Meccan leaders sparked a series of contentious negotiations between the two parties. Umar ibn al-Khattab, Muhammad's closest associate and eventual ruler, had family links to the Quraysh and was thus dispatched as an agent to talk with the Quraysh leaders. His mission was critical since it attempted to secure authorization for Muslims to conduct their pilgrimage peacefully. However, upon his arrival in Mecca, Uthman was arrested by Quraysh leaders who were doubtful of his motives. After several days of intense discussions and misunderstandings, Uthman ibn Affan arrived safely at the Muslim camp. The negotiations resulted in the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. The terms agreed to were critical. First, both groups agreed to a 10-year truce. Second, Muslims were allowed to return the following year to finish their journey. And third, any Muslim who converted in Mecca was returned to their relatives unless they gained permission from their guardians. The Treaty of Hudaybiyah had far-reaching consequences for Islamic history. It established a period of stability during which Islam could expand more freely without fear of conflict. Several tribes began adopting to Islam at this time, owing to increasing exposure to Muslim doctrines. Although it appeared to be a compromise at first, it actually provided Muslims with a strategic advantage by giving them time to solidify their strength. In 629 CE, the Banu Bakr tribe, associated with the Quraysh, invaded the Banu Khuza'a clan, who were Muslims' allies. This act of hostility was interpreted as a direct threat to the treaty and an insult to Muslim honor. In early 630 CE, Muhammad began gathering forces from Medina and other areas that had pledged allegiance to him. He also formed connections with several tribes along the path to Mecca to ensure that they did not interfere with his march. On March 10, 630 CE, Muhammad arrived at the outskirts of Mecca with an army estimated to be 10,000 strong. Despite being outnumbered, the Quraysh did not put up much resistance. Instead, they went back to their houses or deserted the city. Muhammad and his troops approached Mecca peacefully. Upon invading Mecca, Muhammad granted amnesty for the majority of its population. This was viewed as a kindness deed and a means of winning hearts rather than resorting to violence. It also aided in the more seamless integration of the Meccans into the Muslim community. Certain individuals who were exceptionally opposed to Muslims or had committed acts of violence against them were not granted amnesty. Before the conquest, the Kaaba, located in the heart of Mecca, was an important sacred location for polytheistic devotion. It included several idols depicting various gods revered by pre-Islamic Arabs. When Muhammad entered the Kaaba, he ordered the destruction of all idols found there. This act signaled the end of polytheism in Mecca and the establishment of Islam's dominion over this holy location. The destroying process was carried out under Muhammad's direct supervision to guarantee that no idol was left undamaged. After removing the idols from the Kaaba, Muhammad performed a ceremonial prayer, Salah, inside it before circumambulating it 7 times, Tawaf, establishing these rituals as part of Islamic worship customs. This renovation cemented Mecca's reputation as a primary pilgrimage site for Muslims around the world. The conquest of Mecca was a watershed episode in Islamic history, signaling a fundamental shift in Muhammad's ambition to propagate Islam throughout Arabia. With Mecca now under his command, Muhammad's trip was far from complete. The capture of this sacred city heralded a new era in the history of Islam. However, the Arabian Peninsula remained a place of powerful, heavily armed tribes vehemently opposed to the new faith. At 60 years old, Muhammad's unavoidable death loomed, threatening to throw the Islamic alliance into deep trouble. Join us in the next episode as we look at Muhammad's final years, the turbulence that followed his death, and the rise of the First Caliphate, which would forever change the world.